My name is Brandon, and I work as a logistics manager for a large transportation company in Philadelphia. My wife Chloe is a pharmacist at a private clinic. We got married 7 years ago after a long relationship, and I always considered us the perfect couple. It all started with small things. Chloe suddenly became very protective of her phone, always kept it face down, quickly grabbed it when it rang, and started using a password that wasn't there before. When I jokingly asked about it, she said the clinic had introduced new patient confidentiality rules. A week later, I noticed she started receiving strange calls at night. She'd say wrong number, and quickly hang up. But one night I woke up and saw her quietly talking in the bathroom. When she came back, she said it was her colleague about an emergency case. The strangest thing was that Chloe began attending seminars on weekends. She used to hate any additional training, but now she was going somewhere for 2 days every month. Always to different cities: Boston, New York, Washington. One day, while sorting laundry, I found a hotel key card from Atlantic City in her jacket pocket. Strange, since she said she was at a seminar in Baltimore. When I asked, she got confused, then said she stopped by a friend's place on the way. I started paying attention to details. Chloe began showering more often after work, though she used to do it in the morning. She started wearing new lingerie I'd never seen before. And her scent. Sometimes she smelled of perfume that wasn't her usual brand. The worst part was that she became cold with me. No intimacy, always found reasons to sleep separately. Said she was tired from work. One evening, when Chloe went to another seminar, I decided to check our joint finances. What I found shocked me. Over the past 3 months, she had spent almost $5,000 in cash, withdrawing small amounts from ATMs. What could this money be for? I hired a private investigator named Marcus. A week later he called me. "Brandon, you need to sit down." What I found out? It's more complicated than ordinary cheating. We met at a cafe near my office. Marcus placed a thick folder in front of me. "Your wife is indeed cheating on you, but not with just one man," he began. My heart stopped. "She's living a double life. She has a profile on a dating site for wealthy people. She meets with different men, usually middle-aged businessmen." He showed me printouts. Photos of Chloe in expensive dresses, in restaurants with different men, and hotels. In one photo, she was wearing diamond earrings I'd never seen. "Is she taking money from them?" I asked with a trembling voice. "Not directly. But they give her gifts, pay for hotels, restaurants. I saw one of them give her an envelope. Looks like escort services." The world turned upside down. My wife, a pharmacist from a prestigious clinic, was, how do you call it? How many of them? I barely managed to ask. In the last month, I counted 4 different men. Maybe more. I couldn't believe it. The woman who lay in the same bed with me, who kissed me in the morning, was selling herself to strange men for money. "There's one more thing," Marcus continued. "One of these men is Nathan Crawford, owner of a restaurant chain. Very influential person in the city. He has a wife and 2 children. He showed me a photo. A man about 50, gray-haired, in an expensive suit. In the photo, he was embracing Chloe near the entrance to a 5-star hotel. And the other men? Jeremy Stone, chief surgeon from the main hospital, married. Rico Martinez, owner of a construction company, also married. And the 4th one is younger Ethan Black, son of a millionaire, but unmarried." I sat there looking at these photos. My wife with different men. Smiling at them the way she used to smile at me. Touching them the way she used to touch me. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked. I had a plan forming. Cruel but fair. "Can you find out the addresses of their wives?" I asked. The next 2 weeks I prepared carefully. I learned everything about these men, their families, their schedules. Marcus helped me gather information. It turned out that Chloe met with them in turns. Monday and Thursday, Nathan. Tuesday, Jeremy. Friday, Rico. Weekends, Ethan. A perfectly organized schedule. I found out that Nathan's wife, Vivian, runs a charity organization. Jeremy's wife, Rebecca, is a famous lawyer. Enrico's wife, Carla, works as a teacher at a prestigious private school. My plan was simple and cruel at the same time. On Thursday, when Chloe went to meet Nathan, I called Vivian from an anonymous number. "Good evening, Mrs. Crawford. I think you should know where your husband is right now. The Ritz-Carlton Hotel, room 1205. With a woman named Chloe." An hour later, I did the same with Rebecca, telling her about her husband's Tuesday meetings. On Friday, it was Carla's turn to learn the truth about Rico. But the most interesting part one saved for last. On Saturday evening, when Chloe was with Ethan at his penthouse, I organized a real show. Thanks to Marcus, I found out that Ethan's parents, who finance his lavish lifestyle, were coming for a surprise visit. I called Ethan's father, the old millionaire, and said that his son was throwing wild parties in the penthouse with prostitutes. I hinted that this could damage the family's reputation. At 10 in the evening, the furious father came to his son with security. What they saw there can be imagined. But the most important part was yet to come. On Sunday morning, I gathered all the evidence, photos, bank statements, correspondence I managed to find on her phone while she was sleeping. I created a detailed presentation about Chloe's double life. Then I called the clinic where she worked and asked to be connected with the chief physician, Dr. Wilson. Dr. Wilson, I said, I need to inform you about the unethical behavior of one of your employees. It's about Chloe Thompson. I have evidence that she's engaged in prostitution, using your clinic's reputation. On Monday morning, Chloe woke up to a phone call. It was her supervisor. Chloe, you need to come to the office immediately. We have a serious conversation to have. After she left, I calmly packed all her belongings and put them in boxes by the door. I changed the locks in the house. In the evening, when Chloe returned home fired from her job with divorced lovers and scandals in their families, she found her things on the porch and a note. Dear Chloe, I know everything about your double life. About Nathan, Jeremy, Rico, and Ethan. About the money, hotels, and lies. Their wives now know the truth too. Your career is over. You'll receive divorce papers tomorrow. Don't try to contact me. You got what you deserved. A week later, I learned the consequences. Nathan is divorcing his wife and losing half his business. Jeremy lost his job at the hospital after the scandal. Rico is fighting for custody of his children. Ethan is completely cut off from his father's funding. And Chloe? She tried to contact me, wrote messages, begged for forgiveness. Said everything could be fixed. But it was too late. She moved to another state where she found work at a small pharmacy. Her reputation in medical circles was destroyed forever. I filed for divorce and got everything, the house, the car, the savings. The court sided with me when they saw all the evidence of her double life. Now a year has passed. I sold the house with bad memories and bought a new one. I started a new life. Trust in women comes hard, but I'm learning to live again. Sometimes I think if I wasn't too cruel. But then I remember all those months of lies, when she came home after meetings with other men and kissed me with those same lips. And I understand she got exactly what she deserved. Justice can be cruel, but it always triumphs. But wait, there's more to this story that I haven't told anyone. What happened next was even more shocking than what I've already shared. 3 months after our divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Marcus, my private investigator. Brandon, you're not going to believe this. Remember that Ethan guy, the millionaire's son? Well, he didn't just disappear after his father cut him off. He's been trying to track down Chloe. What do you mean? I asked. Apparently, during one of their encounters, Chloe stole something from him. Something valuable. His father's vintage Rolex collection worth over $200,000. Ethan thinks she took them during one of their nights together. This was news to me. I knew Chloe was capable of deception, but theft? That was a new level even for her. There's more, Marcus continued. Ethan hired some, let's say, less reputable people to find her. Word on the street is that he wants his property back, and he's not planning to involve the police. A chill ran down my spine. Despite everything Chloe had done to me, I didn't want her to get hurt. Or maybe I did want justice, but not that kind. Do you know where she is? I asked. She's in Ohio working at a small-town pharmacy. But Brandon, here's the thing, I don't think she actually stole those watches. I've been following this case and the timeline doesn't match. The watches went missing after she'd already left town. Then who took them? I have a theory. Remember Rico Martinez, the construction company owner? He was at Ethan's place for a party 2 weeks after the big scandal broke. I think he took them out of spite, knowing Ethan would blame Chloe. This was getting complicated. A web of revenge, theft, and misdirected anger. And somehow I was still connected to all of it. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the situation. Despite my anger toward Chloe, I realized that if she was innocent of this particular crime, she was in real danger. Ethan's less reputable associates weren't the type to ask questions first. I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Chloe's sister Emma, who lived in Ohio and had taken Chloe in after the divorce. Emma, it's Brandon. I know this is strange, but Chloe might be in danger. There was silence on the other end of the line. What kind of danger? Emma finally asked. I explained the situation with the watches and Ethan's search for her. Emma was shocked. Brandon, Chloe hasn't been the same since everything happened. She's been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why she did what she did. She's genuinely remorseful, not that I expect you to care. I don't, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true anymore. But I don't want her to get hurt over something she didn't do. Emma was quiet for a moment. What do you want me to do? Just, be careful. Maybe she should stay somewhere else for a while. But it was too late. The next day Emma called me in tears. Brandon, they took her. 2 men came to the pharmacy where she works. They said they just wanted to talk, but when she tried to leave, they forced her into a car. My blood ran cold. Despite everything, hearing that Chloe had been kidnapped hit me harder than I expected. The woman who had betrayed me, lied to me, destroyed our marriage, she was still someone I had once loved deeply. Did you call the police? I asked. Yes, but they said without more evidence they can't do much. They think she might have gone willingly at first. I knew I had to act. Not for Chloe but for my own conscience. I couldn't live knowing I had information that might help and did nothing. I called Marcus. I need you to find Rico Martinez. Now. Brandon, what are you planning? I'm going to get those watches back and end this. It took Marcus 6 hours to locate Rico. He was at his construction site office, apparently trying to pretend his life hadn't fallen apart. His wife had indeed left him, taking their kids and half his assets. I walked into his office without an appointment. Rico looked up, surprised and wary. Brandon Thompson. I remember you from all that mess a few months ago. We need to talk, Rico. About Ethan Black's watches. Rico's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Cut the crap. You took them from Ethan's place and now he's got people looking for my ex-wife thinking she did it. She might be innocent of a lot of things but not this. Rico slumped in his chair. How did you know? Does it matter? Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me those watches and I'm going to return them to Ethan. In exchange, I won't tell him who really took them. And if I refuse? I leaned forward. Then I'll make sure everyone in this city knows that Rico Martinez is not only a cheater but also a thief. Your remaining business contacts, your suppliers, your employees. How long do you think your company will survive that? Rico stared at me for a long moment, then opened his desk drawer. He pulled out a small velvet bag. They're all here, he said quietly. I was drunk and angry that night. Angry at Ethan, at my wife, at the whole situation. I thought he deserved it. I took the bag without a word and left. Getting the watches back to Ethan was the tricky part. I couldn't just show up at his door. His father had made it clear that Ethan was persona non grata in the family business, and I didn't know where he was living now. Marcus helped me track him down to a modest apartment across town. When I arrived, Ethan looked like a completely different person from the confident playboy I'd seen in the photos. He was unshaven, wearing cheap clothes, clearly struggling without his father's money. Who are you? He asked when he opened the door. I'm Brandon Thompson, Chloe's ex-husband. His expression immediately hardened. If you're here to defend her, I'm here to give you these. I held up the velvet bag. Ethan's eyes widened. The watches? Where did you get them? It doesn't matter. What matters is that Chloe didn't take them. You need to call off your people. Now. Ethan took the bag with shaking hands, opened it and verified the contents. They're all here. But if she didn't take them, who did? Someone who wanted you to think she did. The point is, she's innocent of this and your guys have kidnapped an innocent woman. For a moment I thought Ethan might refuse. But then he pulled out his phone and made a call. It's me. Yeah, I got them back. Let her go. Now. Yes, I'm sure. Just drop her off somewhere safe and walk away. He hung up and looked at me. It's done. They'll release her. How do I know you're telling the truth? Because I'm not a monster. I was angry, I wanted justice, but I'm not a killer. If she didn't take them, then she didn't deserve what was happening to her. 2 hours later, Emma called to tell me Chloe was safe. She'd been dropped off at a gas station outside Columbus, shaken but unharmed. She wants to talk to you, Emma said. No. Brandon, she says she needs to tell you something important. Something about why she did what she did. I don't care anymore, Emma. But I did care and that was the problem. Despite everything, some part of me still needed to understand. Still needed closure. 3 days later, I found myself driving to Ohio. I told myself it was just to make sure she was really okay, but deep down, I knew I needed to hear what she had to say. Emma's house was a small, tidy place in a quiet neighborhood. When I knocked, Chloe answered the door. She looked older, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. The confident, polished woman I'd married was gone. Brandon. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. We sat in Emma's living room, an awkward silence stretching between us. I know you probably don't want to hear this, Chloe began, but I need to tell you why I did what I did. Not as an excuse, but because you deserve to know the truth. I waited. Do you remember my father? She asked. Of course I remembered. Chloe's father had died 2 years into our marriage. Cancer. It had been devastating for her. Before he died, he told me something. Something I never told you. Her voice was shaking. He said he'd made some bad investments. Gambling debts. He owed money to dangerous people. I felt a chill. How much money? $50,000. And when he died, they came to me. Said the debt transferred to his next of kin. Why didn't you tell me? We could have figured something out. With what money, Brandon? We were barely making ends meet as it was. You were working 60-hour weeks just to pay our mortgage. So you decided to, what? Become a prostitute. She winced. I thought it would be temporary. Just until I could pay off the debt. I never meant for it to go on so long or for you to get hurt. But it did go on. 4 months. Because they kept adding interest. And fees. Every time I thought I was close to paying it off, they'd add more. It was like quicksand. I sat there trying to process this information. Part of me wondered if it was just another lie, another manipulation. But the pain in her voice seemed real. You could have trusted me, I said finally. We were married. We were supposed to face problems together. I know. And that's my biggest regret. Not the money, not even what I did with those men. My biggest regret is that I didn't trust you enough to tell you the truth. So you destroyed our marriage to pay off your dead father's gambling debts? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. And the worst part is, it didn't even work. I never paid them off. After everything that happened, after I lost you and my job and my life, they just disappeared. Maybe they got arrested, maybe they found other targets. But the debt that destroyed everything? It just vanished. I felt a surge of anger so intense it surprised me. All of it, the lies, the cheating, the destruction of our life together, for nothing. A debt that apparently didn't even matter in the end. I don't expect forgiveness, Chloe continued. I just wanted you to know that it wasn't because I didn't love you. I did love you. I still do. I was just scared and stupid and I made the worst possible choices. I stood up. I need to go. Brandon, wait. There's something else. I turned back. I'm sick. The words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, sick? I've been having some health problems. The stress, the lifestyle. I contracted something from one of those men. Something that's not going to go away. I closed my eyes. Even now, even after everything, hearing that she was sick hurt. Are you? I'm getting treatment. It's manageable, but my life is effectively over. No one will want me now. I can't have children. I can barely work. Chloe. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because you deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved honesty, you deserved trust, you deserved a wife who would come to you when she was in trouble instead of destroying both your lives trying to solve it alone. I stood there, looking at this broken woman who had once been my everything. I felt a complex mix of emotions, anger, sadness, pity, and yes, even still a trace of love. I'm sorry, I said finally. I'm sorry about your father's debt, I'm sorry about your illness, I'm sorry about everything that happened. But we can't. I know. I'm not asking for anything, Brandon. I just wanted you to understand. I left Ohio that day with a heavy heart. The revenge I'd thought would satisfy me felt hollow now. Yes, Chloe had made terrible choices, but she'd been trapped in an impossible situation. The men who'd taken advantage of her desperation had faced consequences, but so had she. Everyone had lost. 6 months later, Emma called to tell me that Chloe had died. The illness had progressed faster than expected. She'd spent her last months volunteering at a women's shelter, trying to help other women who found themselves in desperate situations. At her funeral, I was surprised to see Nathan Crawford's wife, Vivian. She approached me afterward. I wanted to thank you, she said. For what? For telling me the truth about my husband. Yes, it destroyed my marriage, but it also freed me. I'm happier now than I've been in years. And I wanted you to know that Chloe contacted me before she died. She apologized, explained about her father's debts. She asked me to make sure you knew that she never stopped regretting what she did to you. As I drove home from the funeral, I realized that revenge, real revenge, isn't about destroying someone else's life. It's about finding your own peace. Chloe had paid the ultimate price for her choices, but in the end, she tried to make amends. She tried to help others avoid her mistakes. Justice had been served, but not in the way I'd expected. Sometimes the cruelest punishment is simply living with the consequences of your choices. And sometimes for both the betrayed and the betrayer, the only real resolution is death. I never remarried. The scars from that betrayal ran too deep. But I learned to live with them, and eventually I even learned to forgive. Not for her sake but for mine. Because carrying that anger, that need for revenge, was just another kind of prison. And I'd spent enough of my life trapped by other people's choices. But life has a way of coming full circle, and 2 years after Chloe's funeral, I received a call that would once again turn my world upside down. It was from a lawyer named Patricia Mills. She explained that she was handling the estate of someone named Robert Chin, a wealthy businessman who had recently passed away. According to her, Mr. Chin had left specific instructions in his will regarding me. "I'm sorry, but I don't know anyone named Robert Chin," I told her. "Mr. Thompson, Mr. Chin was very specific. He said you would know him by a different name. He went by Rico Martinez in his business dealings in Philadelphia." My blood ran cold. Rico Martinez, one of Chloe's clients, one of the men whose life I'd helped destroy through my revenge. "Mr. Chin wanted to meet with you before his death, but his illness progressed too quickly," the lawyer continued. "However, he left a letter for you along with something else. Can you come to my office tomorrow?" I almost refused. The last thing I wanted was to be dragged back into that nightmare from my past. But curiosity got the better of me. Patricia Mills' office was in downtown Boston, in one of those glass towers that screamed expensive legal services. She was a woman in her 50s, professional but warm. "Before I give you Mr. Chen's letter," she said, "I need to explain something about his situation. Rico Martinez wasn't his real name. His real name was Robert Chin, and he was the son of Chinese immigrants who built a small empire in construction and real estate. The name Rico Martinez was an identity he adopted to fit into certain business circles that weren't always welcoming to Asian Americans." She handed me a thick envelope. "He also left instructions for me to give you this." She placed a bank check on the desk. The amount made me dizzy, $500,000. "I don't understand," I managed to say. "Read the letter. It explains everything." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter was handwritten in careful script. "Dear Brandon, by the time you read this I will be gone. Liver cancer, the doctors say. Perhaps it's fitting justice for the life I lived. I know you have no reason to think kindly of me. I was one of the men who contributed to the destruction of your marriage, one of the men who took advantage of your wife's desperation. I have lived with the shame of that for 3 years now. But there are things you don't know about that situation, things that I believe you deserve to understand. Your wife Chloe came to me not through choice but through coercion. The men who threatened her about her father's debts, they were working for me. I was the one who arranged for those debts to be transferred to her name after her father's death. I was the one who demanded payment in the form that ultimately destroyed your marriage. I know this makes me a monster. I have known it every day since I met her. But please understand, I never intended for things to go as far as they did. Your wife's father, David, had indeed gambled away a substantial sum. But the debt was only $15,000, not $50,000. I inflated it, added fake interest and fees because I had become obsessed with your wife. I had seen her at the hospital where my own wife was being treated for depression, and I became fixated on her. When David died and I saw an opportunity to get close to Chloe, I took it. I convinced her that she owed far more than she actually did, and when she became desperate, I suggested alternative payment methods. What I didn't anticipate was how the situation would spiral. Chloe was so terrified of these imaginary debt collectors that she sought out additional sources of income. She began seeing other men, thinking she needed to raise money faster. Nathan Crawford, Jeremy Stone, Ethan Black. None of them were part of my plan. They were just predators who sensed vulnerable prey. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late to stop it without revealing my own role. And I was a coward. I let it continue because I was afraid of losing her, afraid of facing the consequences of what I'd done. When you exposed everything, when my own marriage fell apart, I told myself it was justice. But over the past 3 years, as I've watched the ripple effects of my actions, I've come to understand the true scope of the damage I caused. Your wife died believing she had destroyed your marriage to pay off her father's legitimate debts. She never knew that I had manipulated the entire situation. She died carrying guilt that should have been mine alone. I am giving you this money not because it can undo what I did, but because it's all I can do. It represents every penny of profit I made from the construction contracts that my fake identity as Rico Martinez secured over the years. Money that I earned while living a lie, money that feels poisoned by the deception that enabled it. I also want you to know that in her final months, Chloe tried to contact me. She wanted to apologize, to make amends. I was too ashamed to see her, too cowardly to face the woman whose life I had systematically destroyed. That cowardice is something I will carry to my grave. You are a better man than I ever was, Brandon. The fact that you tried to save her at the end, even after everything she had done to you, proves that. I hope you can find a way to use this money to honor her memory in a way that I never could. There's one more thing. In my safe deposit box, I've left evidence of everything I've told you here. Bank records, communications with the fake debt collectors, everything. If you ever want to clear Chloe's name publicly, to let the world know that she was a victim rather than a villain, you have the means to do so. I don't expect or deserve your forgiveness. I just hope that someday you might find peace with the knowledge that the woman you loved was not the calculating predator that circumstances made her appear to be. She was just a scared young woman who got caught in the web of a bitter, obsessed man's manipulation. Robert Chin. I sat in that lawyer's office for 20 minutes after finishing the letter, unable to move or speak. Everything I thought I knew about the situation had been wrong. Chloe hadn't chosen that life, she'd been driven to it by a man's sick obsession and manipulation. Mr. Thompson? Patricia Mills asked gently. Are you all right? She was innocent, I whispered. All this time I thought she had chosen to betray me, but she was trying to protect me. She was trying to save us both from what she thought was a real threat. The lawyer nodded sympathetically. Mr. Chin was very torn up about this before he died. He spent his last months trying to figure out how to make amends. I looked at the check again. $500,000 felt like blood money, but it also represented an opportunity. An opportunity to do something meaningful with the wreckage of our story. There's more, Patricia continued. Mr. Chin also arranged for a full investigation into the other men involved. Nathan Crawford, Jeremy Stone, and Ethan Black. He wanted to make sure they faced appropriate consequences for their actions. She handed me another folder. The investigation revealed that all three men had patterns of exploiting vulnerable women. Nathan Crawford was running what amounted to a prostitution ring through his restaurant business. Jeremy Stone was trading surgical favors for sexual services from desperate patients. And Ethan Black? Well, his trust fund has been frozen pending an investigation into multiple assault allegations. What happened to them? Crawford is facing federal trafficking charges. Stone lost his medical license and is facing civil suits from dozens of victims. Black is in prison awaiting trial. Mr. Chin made sure that their crimes didn't go unpunished, even if his own remained secret until now. I left Boston that day with more questions than answers, but also with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Chloe had died believing she was a terrible person who had destroyed our marriage for money. The truth was so much more complex and tragic. Over the following weeks, I struggled with what to do with Robert Chen's revelation. Should I make it public? Should I try to clear Chloe's name posthumously? Would that honor her memory or just cause more pain for everyone involved? I decided to start small. I used some of Chen's money to establish a foundation that helped women escape situations of economic coercion and sexual exploitation. I called it the Chloe Thompson Foundation, and I made sure that her story, the real story, was part of its mission statement. Emma, Chloe's sister, was initially skeptical when I told her what I'd learned. Are you sure this isn't just another lie? She asked. Another manipulation from beyond the grave? The evidence is all there, I said, showing her copies of the documents Patricia Mills had given me. Bank records, recorded conversations, everything. Your sister was a victim, Emma. She was trying to protect both of us from what she thought was a real threat. Emma broke down crying when she saw the proof. All this time I thought she had just made terrible choices. I was so angry with her for throwing away her marriage, her career, everything. And she was just scared. The foundation grew quickly. Word spread through social media about an organization that truly understood the complexities of sexual exploitation and economic coercion. Women who had found themselves in situations similar to Chloe's reached out for help. One of them was a young woman named Jessica who had been forced into prostitution to pay off her mother's medical bills. Another was Maria, whose abusive ex-husband had threatened to have her deported unless she earned money for him through sex work. Each story reinforced my understanding of how complicated these situations really were. But the most shocking contact came 6 months after I'd established the foundation. I received a call from a woman who said she was Nathan Crawford's daughter, Ashley. Mr. Thompson, I know this might be strange, but I wanted to thank you for exposing my father. I was stunned. Thank me? I destroyed your family. No, you saved us. My father was a monster and we lived in fear of him for years. When his crimes were exposed, when he went to prison, it was the first time my mother and I felt safe in decades. Ashley explained that Nathan had been abusing his own family for years, using his wealth and influence to keep them silent. The prostitution ring he'd been running through his restaurants was just one aspect of his criminal behavior. Your wife Chloe wasn't the only victim, Ashley continued. There were dozens of women over the years. Girls he threatened, women he coerced, lives he destroyed. When you exposed him, you didn't just get revenge for yourself, you saved future victims. This conversation changed my perspective on everything that had happened. Yes, my marriage had been destroyed, and Chloe had paid the ultimate price for Robert Chen's manipulation. But the chain of events had also led to the exposure and punishment of predators who might have otherwise continued harming vulnerable people for years. I began speaking publicly about the Chloe Thompson Foundation, telling her story, the real story, to audiences across the country. At first it was difficult. Standing on stages, talking about the most painful period of my life, exposing the complexities of a situation that most people preferred to see in simple black and white terms. But the response was overwhelming. Other men came forward to share their own stories of discovering that their partners had been coerced or manipulated into situations that looked like betrayal but were actually survival tactics. Women shared stories of the impossible choices they'd been forced to make, the shame they carried, the judgment they faced from people who couldn't understand their circumstances. One evening, after a particularly emotional speaking engagement at a university in Chicago, a young woman approached me. She was probably in her early 20s, nervous but determined. "Mr. Thompson, my name is Sarah. I knew your wife." My heart stopped. "You knew Chloe?" "Not personally. But I was in a similar situation about 4 years ago. I was being exploited by the same network that trapped her. She found me at a hotel bar one night, sitting there crying after a particularly bad encounter." Sarah's voice was shaking, but she continued. "Your wife sat down next to me and just started talking. She didn't ask questions, didn't judge, just talked about random things until I calmed down. Then she gave me her phone number and said if I ever needed help, or just someone to talk to, I could call her." "Did you call her?" "Many times. She helped me find a therapist, helped me apply for jobs, even gave me money for rent when I was trying to get out of that life. She never told me much about her own situation, but I could tell she understood what I was going through." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. "She saved my life, Mr. Thompson. I'm in graduate school now, studying social work because I want to help other women the way she helped me. When I heard about your foundation, about her real story, I knew I had to tell you. Your wife wasn't just a victim, she was also a hero. Even while she was trapped in that terrible situation, she was trying to help other women escape it." This revelation added another layer to my understanding of who Chloe really was. Even while being manipulated and exploited, even while struggling with the shame and fear of her circumstances, she had been reaching out to help others in similar situations. I started incorporating Sarah's story into my speaking engagements, painting a fuller picture of Chloe as someone who had been simultaneously victim and survivor, exploited and compassionate, trapped and still reaching out to help others. The foundation continued to grow. We opened 3 residential facilities for women escaping exploitation, established a legal aid program, and created educational initiatives to help people recognize and respond to economic coercion. Every program was designed with the understanding that these situations were complex, that victims often appeared complicit, and that healing required both practical support and emotional validation. 5 years after Chloe's death, 7 years after the destruction of our marriage, I received one more unexpected contact. It was from Vivian Crawford, Nathan's ex-wife, whom I'd met briefly at Chloe's funeral. "Brandon, I wanted to let you know that I've been following the work of your foundation. It's incredible what you've built." "Thank you, Vivian. How are you and Ashley doing?" "We're well. Ashley is in law school now, planning to specialize in helping victims of sexual trafficking. The experience with her father, as terrible as it was, gave her a sense of purpose." Vivian paused, then continued. "I wanted to ask you something. I've been thinking about writing a book about my experiences, about what it was like to be married to someone who was systematically exploiting vulnerable women. I think it might help people understand how these predators operate, how they hide in plain sight." "That sounds like important work. Would you be willing to contribute a chapter?" "About Chloe's story, about how the foundation came to be. I think it would help people understand the full scope of these crimes, how they affect not just the direct victims but entire families." I agreed to contribute to Vivian's book, and when Hidden Predators, a family story of survival and justice, was published 2 years later, it became a bestseller. The chapter about Chloe and the foundation helped bring national attention to the issue of economic coercion and sexual exploitation. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. The mayor of Philadelphia announced that the city was renaming a small park in our old neighborhood, Chloe Thompson Memorial Park. At the dedication ceremony, dozens of women who had been helped by the foundation gathered to honor her memory. Emma spoke at the ceremony, her voice strong and proud. "My sister made mistakes, but she was not a bad person. She was a woman caught in an impossible situation, trying to protect the people she loved. Brandon has helped the world see her as she really was, not perfect, but human. Not a villain, but a victim who still found ways to be a hero." As I stood there listening to Emma's words, watching the faces of the women who had found safety and support through programs that bore Chloe's name, I finally felt something I hadn't experienced in nearly a decade: peace. The revenge I had originally sought felt insignificant compared to the justice we had ultimately achieved. Yes, the men who had exploited vulnerable women had been punished. But more importantly, systems had been put in place to help prevent future victims, and Chloe's memory had been transformed from a cautionary tale about betrayal into an inspiration for compassion and second chances. I never did remarry. The scars from that betrayal, even understanding its true nature, had changed me too fundamentally. But I found purpose and meaning in ways I never could have imagined during those dark months of discovery and revenge. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about what might have been different if Chloe had trusted me enough to tell me about Robert Chen's threats from the beginning. Would we have found a way through it together? Could our marriage have survived? But I've learned that those questions, while natural, are ultimately futile. We can't change the past, and we can't live our lives in the shadow of what might have been. All we can do is take the broken pieces of our experiences and try to build something meaningful from them. That's what the Chloe Thompson Foundation represents, not just justice for one woman who was failed by the systems that should have protected her, but hope for all the women who find themselves in similar situations. It's proof that even the most tragic circumstances can be transformed into something that helps others heal. And perhaps that's the most powerful form of revenge after all, not destroying your enemies but building something so positive and lasting that it overshadows their capacity for harm. Taking the worst thing that ever happened to you and using it to make sure it happens to fewer people in the future. Chloe would have liked that, I think. She would have been proud to know that her story, painful as it was, had become a source of hope for other women facing impossible choices. That the foundation bearing her name had helped hundreds of women escape situations of exploitation and coercion. As I write this, nearly 10 years after that first night when I noticed Chloe being secretive with her phone, I can finally say that I've found peace with our story. Not happiness, the loss and betrayal will always be part of me, but peace. The kind that comes from understanding that sometimes the most meaningful victories emerge from our deepest defeats. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.